Hey guys, I have Sean from Arcana, and we go way back, but we recently just reconnected because I've been busy, he's been busy, we've been doing a lot of stuff, and Sean's been an inspiration. We did a project together back when I was at ByteDance. So, Sean, great to reconnect. How have you been?
Things are good. It's been a little bit crazy after the whole pandemic. I guess it's still with us, but kind of everything shut down. We had to have all our employees working from home. We have them coming back, I hope, 1 to 2 times a week, but mostly everyone's still working from home.
Mm-hmm. I see. And from a creativity slash making movies, making animation standpoint, it must have affected you, right? It must have affected how you guys had a workflow.
Yeah. So what the first thing we had to do, there's a young man named Brady. He was my head of production. He was awesome. He kept coming into the studio every day, and we kind of did a roll off, and then we had to do different things. So like if you're in our lighting, rendering, or compositing team, they were able to remote desktop in, and they still do, using studio computers because all the assets are here. If you're animating, there is a little bit of a lag, no matter what we tried to do. So we actually took the computers for animators and dropped them off at their home.
Wow.
That
Wow.
was a little bit of a learning curve for us.
I bet. I bet. I mean, in my line of work, we've done some remote stuff too. And like you said, technology has made a lot of things easier, but still, it's cannot beat the in person, especially on projects that require collaboration. Unfortunately, it's better if there's people around you. You could talk, bounce ideas off. Sometimes, if needed, a person can sit down and take over for a little bit, right? Like, that's the thing that remote hasn't completely solved yet.
I do agree that synergy is still lacking, and kind of a little bit, morale culture. We used to have like, pancake mornings and beer Fridays and fun little get togethers, but we had their Christmas party this year, so that was a bit better. But overall, I find it used to be a little bit more fun, somewhat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. So to let viewers know the context of how Sean and I met. So I was at ByteDance at the time, and I was given this project thrust on me. Hey, just make sort of higher budget content. Basically, the app wasn't ready for it, right? But I was given the task. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so Sean and I made this really cool little animation, and that's how I first discovered Arcana. Was at that point they did a lot of cool animations. And now if you go on Arcana, which I'll link their page once this video comes out, there's feature films on top of that. So Sean, let's start from the beginning. How did you guys get into animation? And I know you guys did voiceover back then too. How did you guys then move from that to feature films?
Yeah, so it all started with a single comic book, Cade. I published it December 2003, and then started publishing books. Arcana's published about 300 books, one of which is A Cat Named Haiku by Mark Poulton, who's now gone on to crowdfunding legend. He just had one come out recently, and so he's on Indiegogo. Cat Named Haiku is the one we did with Top Buzz and everything. That was cool. And from comic books, we ended up producing a movie called Pixies that I wrote and directed. And the pre-production process is kind of similar to making comic books. Starts with the script, the story. You do character designs. You do comic book panels, aka storyboards, and that's kind of the exact same process. At that point, you now have to get into Maya, animation, lighting, rendering, compositing, sound, etc. We've produced 10 animated feature films. The 10th one comes out next year, Heroes of the Golden Mask. And then September 2020, we took another big leap and we started doing live action film financing. I've now done at that point 9 animated features, kind of knew what I was doing. And so I was able to put the producing skills towards live action. It was a feature film with Bruce Willis called Apex. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was filmed in Vancouver. It's either, I believe it was us. I was told someone else is saying it, but regardless, we went to camera in August of 2020, which either made us the first or second production back in British Columbia, Canada,
Wow.
and learned a lot.
I
And
bet.
then, yeah, since then, I think I've probably been a producer of about maybe, I don't even know, 15 live action features.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I think one of the questions when, let's say, some people look at even your earlier work, the animated stuff, you had some major talent doing the voices, right? So for someone that's wondering, how do I go about and find that talent? How do I connect with that talent? I think that's a question I'm going to ask you, because let's say someone, they have, an animated script. I got friends who are very talented animators. How do you get someone like Christopher Plummer or someone like Bill Paxton to be the voices? So tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it up till now has kind of been, I guess, almost goodwill. It's really hard unless you're living with them or know them to get to know these people. So you kind of have to go through the managers and the agencies. Makes it a little bit more challenging, to be honest with you. So, and they're always there, and that's what they do, and they're great for that. But if you're going that route, you should definitely understand it's a business, and these people's time is worth money. So it's important to show up there and not ask for, I mean, do it, to be honest with you, like some of the prices I've seen, and it's just been crazy, soup to nuts. I've seen actors who absolutely love a script or love something, and they're doing it relatively affordably, and I've seen others that, like, maybe they don't love it as much, so they're getting paid a small fortune. Regardless, it's always that type of chicken and the egg, because once you get the name, you'll have immediate interest.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson. Sometimes you can't solve the chicken or the egg problem until you get that first person, right? And
Right.
a lot of times is knocking on doors or the people just asking them. And the thing from my perspective, because I have animation channels that I watch too on YouTube, and I've even said to myself, if they ever want me to do a voice, I won't ask for any money. Like, I would love, because sometimes if it's a really cool project, artists are people, right? There's not like we're different. It's just, so that in itself, if there's something interesting, sometimes we're just like, we want to be part of it. It's so simple like that. And I think that's something that gets lost sometimes, especially it's like, oh my God, this person, he or she's done some stuff. Oh no, I don't know. I don't know if this person wants to be. It's like, just ask.
For sure. And then that's the thing. Like, I mean, when I was kind of figuring my way out, I read this interview on Donnie Darko with Drew Barrymore. And I think the director was like, oh, so hard, oh, so hard. And I think he compared it to like a pool party or a backyard party. The second Drew Barrymore said yes, I was like, he got a lot of traction, and then things started happening. And how you get that yes, I don't know, family, friend, meet them at a bookstore signing. I'm not totally sure, but yeah, it's like once you get a little momentum, it starts to hopefully take on legs of its own.
And what's interesting about Corrective Measures is that it is on Tubi, right? People can watch it on Tubi. Now, what's interesting is, so I cannot name this movie because it'll get me demonetized if this channel ever gets monetized. But there was a movie I was in many years ago that's on Tubi. Now, how did you guys decide Tubi? That's something really interesting. I discovered Tubi during the pandemic too, so I don't remember if they emerged during the pandemic, but Tubi's been almost like a godsend to a lot of entertainment because it's not something you have to buy a subscription to. They pay for themselves through ads. So tell me about Tubi.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Tubi is a subsidiary of Fox. I think why Tubi's gone such a high profile is when Fox sold off 20th Century Fox and Fox television assets to Disney. They still retain Fox Sports, Fox News, Tubi. And so, I think they kind of doubled down on Tubi and streaming. And, they call it the streaming wars, if you will. I love Tubi. I mean, we were the very first Tubi premiere original. It's awesome that I can, solicit my own movie and market it and push it without having to have people pay for it. I always feel kind of bad. Oh, you can download it here, buy it here. It's nice to have that open channel there. And it's available on Tubi in Canada and the US. And then foreign, we sold to the exchange. So it's been awesome, to be honest with you. I've really loved it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what the exchange is. I'm going to look at this right now. So let's keep talking about the streaming wars, because as we can see, there's hundreds of platforms, and it's really funny. You go on a lot of them, and it's like 20% of the movies are all the same on like all of them, right? So that itself makes me laugh. And you know there's going to be a major consolidation, and who knows where it's going to go. Do you have any thoughts on this? Like, where do you think the streaming war is going to go?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting because right now the stock market's obviously a little soft. So, Disney stock is probably down, I think, from where it might need to be. And then, Amazon and Netflix and everyone. I think when Tubi came in, it was, good for a lot of creators. Gives another platform for voices. I'm sure, and I'm guessing, I don't know, part of Fox's strategy might be to build up Tubi to a certain level, and either do some mergers or acquisitions. Tubi has made so much ground compared to, the rest of the industry. So they're doing great. I mean, for us, it's been interesting because like we recently just joined Peacock as well. And that's been fantastic for us. And that's another AVOD. So there's SVOD, streaming video on demand, AVOD, advertising video on demand. And so all the different platforms have been interesting to see how it works. And, I'm usually a little skeptical of AVOD, but Peacock and Tubi, it's been fantastic.
Yeah. And it's funny how these terms have emerged, right? Because when we first met, there was VOD, and all of us thought that VOD would get destroyed by, let's say, a platform like YouTube. But then there was a dearth of this type of content, right? When I mean this, it's like the type of content you would want to see on a television, and people wanted that, and you just weren't getting that on something like YouTube. And so, like, AVOD and SVOD, it's the first time I've heard those terms, but they make sense now. It's like VOD is not probably going to die anytime soon. It just evolved based on how the world is changing.
Sure. And there's also TVOD, which is transactional video on demand. So like the Apple Store, you either buy or rent something for 24 hours a day or whatever it is.
Yeah. So Amazon Prime, a lot of their stuff is TVOD too.
Yep. Yeah. I think a lot of them, like I think Amazon pretty much, I think they do everything. And I don't even, Disney Plus, I think they are having a AVOD model where it's less per month, but now you have ads.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's come in yet, but I know I did read about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm writing these terms down as we talk because this is something for me to kind of pay attention to. And I'll drop this to pretend I'm smart in the future too. So, okay. We hung out one time at a film festival, right? And I know film festivals are slowly opening up again. Is that still kind of a major venue you hit up a lot to kind of go and whether network or sell things or buy things? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it used to be. I mean, so I still go. Humbly, I don't know if they're quite as valuable as they once were because during, lockdown or whatever, there was so many meetings. It really kind of threw things off a bit. Now, it's always good to maintain those face-to-face relationships. They know who they're dealing with. This year, I went to MIP Africa in Cape Town. That was pretty cool. And I went to MIP Cancun, obviously in Cancun. Those are fantastic. MIP Africa, this was their first year. I am going to Berlinale, the European film market, in February. And so, there's festivals and markets. Film festivals do have buyers there. Generally, it is about watching the films, having premieres, those type of things, Sundance. And then markets, there are screenings, but the focus is primarily on, sitting at the booth more or less and, buying and selling content. So for me, I've always tried to focus on the markets, and they've been valuable. But I find there's a lot more business being done outside of markets now. Like in a good way, I think that you can actually sell your movie 365 days a year, really. I mean, it used to be wait till the market, but now feels like people buy and sell whenever.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one of the very interesting continuous evolutions that we're going to continue following. I think the other topic that I find very fascinating. So, as everyone knows by now, because when I first started ByteDance, very few people knew what ByteDance was, but everyone knows because of TikTok. So, ByteDance is Chinese, right? And everyone tried to get into the Chinese market back in the day. And I think that probably is something that's more nuanced now, just because the way the world's changing and the fact that in 2023, and this video might come out in 2023, I don't know yet, but in 2023, India's population is going to beat China's officially, even though most Chinese people would admit that probably India's population has beaten China's for at least 2 years, but officially it's going to happen next year. So like that's kind of something interesting too for anyone thinking about art or filmmaking, etc. There's other markets emerging that probably want cool content. But then thinking about India, I think about they also have their own industry. In fact, they make more movies per capita, I think, than America and Canada combined. So lots of interesting topics to think about.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I mean, so I don't even know if you know this. We actually own an office in Beijing. So I have what's called a WOFI, a wholly foreign owned enterprise, and China's always been a big part of our, strategy, and for us, the idea is based on our comic books. We own the copyright of the movies I've directed, and so moving forward, a big part of it is licensing. And so, the goal is there's on any given day 203 countries on the planet. The idea is to try and license it to them all. It's like try and get every single one if you can. Catch them all, Pokemon style.
Exactly. I think a kind of question that some viewers might have is, what is the day-to-day like of Sean?
It's very, very different, to be honest with you. Going to these, like Cape Town, for me to get from Vancouver to Cape Town, door to door was about 30 hours. It took about 12 to 13 hours to go from Vancouver to Frankfurt, 12 to 13 hours to go from Frankfurt to Cape Town. So during that time, it was a lot of travel, a lot of work, meeting with people. The one thing I'm trying to do more, and I think this will be a 2023 resolution, is I want to kind of be a little more focused on what I want to do. A lot of times, part of my role is like, doing what I have to do. And so like when you own the company, you kind of, it has to go somewhere, has to be done by someone. So I tend to do a lot of things that maybe I'm trying to streamline and not do, if possible. I can leave accounting to the accountants, leave legal to the legal, and somehow I get a lot of my time sucked up in those type of things.
And I think that's a question too that leads to another question, which is, so obviously you're an executive now. How did you get your start in all this? Did you start out kind of creating your own company, or did you kind of start out low? So yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, my very first one, it was Cade. I remember I was created in 2002. And then I pitched digitalwebbing.com. I don't even know if they're around anymore. They're a web comic provider, and I got rejected, to be honest with you. And I was like, oh, that hurt. And so then I created my own publishing company. Then we went on to do a whole bunch of comics, and then that led to animation, which led to live action. And I think for me, it's been kind of, every time you watch, Tony Stark, he's always been an inspiration because he always comes back and got beat up, learns quickly, and tries to, do the next suit, his next Mark 43. And, I try and, idolize him a bit, like just continually self-improvement, change, try different things, experiment, try and fail quickly, try and learn from the failure. And that's kind of been a lot of my, career, if you will, I guess.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a Chinese word called gaizhen, right? Gaishan actually is the right word, gaishan, which in Japanese is kaizen. And a lot of tech companies, a lot of kind of modern manufacturing tries to take some of those concepts, Gaizen or Gaishan, as we say in Mandarin. So it sounds like you've kind of lived that life, so to speak. And that's definitely
Does that mean fail fast, or what exactly?
It means like, so the translation from Japanese means continuous improvement, but it
Right.
doesn't really encapture the full word because the word shun has like a virtuous slash like positive meaning. So it's not just about the improvement or the failing. It's also about, okay, you're kind of building something positive on top of that, right? And that's the thing. It's like, okay, I take one Tony Stark suit and I built something even better, right? So like it's always emphasizing that part of it, like the creating the something better, the something even more whatever. So that's something that the reason I'm talking about this is I think it's easy to be like, oh, I gotta work on this, I gotta work on this, but then it's like, but I'm also like getting better at something, right? And that's like the
Right.
mental shift that's needed. And that's something that I think you've really hinted at is that, okay, well, this thing, it didn't like my comics. Well, I create my own and I get even better and I have a company. You know, you're continually improving, but not because it's like you feel lacking. It's like, no, I want to get to something even the next stage, so to speak. You see that little like hack and thinking that I've been working on?
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like that's been, like you said, it's one of those things you want to be happy with what you got, but at the same time you want to have enough drive and motivation. And I also tend to get kind of bored pretty quick. So like I actually truly enjoy learning new things. My newest little project right now is Stable Diffusion. I started playing with either EB Synth or Absinthe last night, and it's kind of an older, well, by older 2 years, but they just had a big update to it, and so I was playing around with that, and obviously all this AI generated art on Stable Diffusion and Midjourney and everything else is. I mean, on November 10th of this year, I've been on Midjourney since version 1 beta, and in 1 year, watching 1, 2, 3, 4. When 4 hit, I told my wife, I'm like, no, this is different. This is like, because humbly, I come from character designs, comic books, animation. It never quite got it. It was very impressionistic. November 10th, I'm like, oh, it happened.
Yeah. And you mentioned your wife, which is another cool topic to talk about. So, how do you balance the family and the art? And then, slash, does your wife help you with your business?
For sure, yeah. So I mean, I have 4 kids. We have an 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, two 13-year-olds. My wife, I founded the company somewhat as a hobby. Like I said, I get bored. I still love comics. And so I started doing that. And then I think a lot of things changed kind of once our twins entered kindergarten. So probably about 8 years ago, she was able to help me, and she comes from like a banking background. So she does like insurance and payroll and kind of the boring HR stuff. And it allowed me to focus more on the creative, which is it's worked great for us. And yeah, it makes a great partnership. And so we went to MIP Cancun together. I mean, why not? It's MIP Cancun. But yeah, it's been excellent. So she's been amazing.
Wow. Yeah. It sounds like when I talk to creatives, people who have successful businesses, that seems to be a common trend is that if you can find almost like a partner that really, really can complement and supplement, that seems to be one of the secret winning formulas to all this.
Yeah, well said. And there's no, I totally agree. And then there's also that trust factor. I mean, it has to ideally if it complements you, and it supports, and then also just you trust a person. I've been doing this a while, and I've been burnt and had a lot of a lot of bad partnerships, we'll call it. But again, fail quick, learn, evolve. And so for me, I now know if I'm working as a producer on your project or am I the producer on my project. I call it the producer as opposed to a producer, because sometimes you read the credits and it's like, I was involved in a project that had 18 producers on it. You got to kind of know the pecking order a little bit and just go, okay, you're the producer. I'll follow 9. This is yours. And so some of those we've had, issues, but always made it through and learned and smarter and better.
Yeah, it's funny about the producer credit thing because, executive producer, assistant producer, associate producer, line producer, so many. And like you
I
said, you got
know.
to know the pecking order.
Yeah. And then there's produced by or producer. And there's all these little nuances, positioning, single card credit or shared credit. Like there's just so many things.
Yeah,
Paid
yeah,
advertising or not.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, so you guys have done feature films. You're still doing animation. What's a project next year that you're really excited about?
So here's the Golden Mask is being released. So I'm very excited to see that one released. It was a little bit delayed because of all the stuff I mentioned at the beginning with workflow and all the employees. So I'm excited to see that one come out. We're in production right now of Ultra Duck animated feature film. We're just handing in My Brother the Monster, a 26 episode series distributed by Cake. Go Fish Plus, based on the movie Go Fish. That's wrapping up now. And I'm trying to get my next live action feature up and going. So lots of good stuff happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What type of genre do you really like, or do you want to do more?
I mean, I think you said it. It's genre for me. Like the I've produced some Hallmark content, which is great, and thrillers. I mean, I like the stuff that's really soaking in genre. Like if you're going to go for it, like really have your tone, have a bizarre vision, like those are the ones that kind of excite me the most. Like when you watch I just heard I haven't seen it, Violent Night, I heard is just fun and crazy, and so that's one I want to see. I just watched Avatar 2, that's obviously amazing. And at the end of the day, you're watching this alien planet with lots of blue people over it. It's a bit crazy. But I like the ones when it comes to genre. Science fiction is always fun, sometimes harder to sell. Horror, if done right, can be fun. But yeah, so I like ones that are a bit heavier in a genre.
Yeah. And talking about genres, so when shout out Dan Forsey, by the way. Dan Forsey's the one that connected Sean and I back in the day in 2016. Now, when I first looked on your YouTube page, the first video that got me hooked, and it was the video I actually showed my team at ByteDance, and then it got us to collaborate, was that little short you guys did called Avner. So let's
Yes.
talk a little about Avner, because the animation was awesome. You guys found a really cool piece of music to it. It was just like the perfect animated short. So tell me about the process of that, because it was a
Sure.
very, very inspiring short that led to a collaboration. So please tell me more about that.
Yeah, so Abner is created by Rand Zerdansky. It is a gorgeous little piece. I actually met the person who sung the song, and she's from Israel. And so she knows English, but she is English as a second language. And so when she sings it, it's quite mesmerizing. There's actually, it was funny. So we still want to do Avner. There was a Netflix series that came out called Lost Ollie. And it's kind of, so if you know Avner, you should maybe look at the Lost Ollie trailer. I'm sure it has nothing to do with us, but when you kind of see it, you're like, oh, well, that, and so sometimes when we do these things, you're creating something, and then another thing comes along that is similar enough that you're kind of like, oh boy, maybe that shelves it. Back in the day, we did 100 Girls, and then the TV series Orphan Black came out. And I was like, oh boy, that's really similar. And not in a bad way, like there's no lawyers or you stole. It just, creative things sometimes run in parallel. And yeah, when I saw Lost Ollie, I was like, and it's quite a bit different, to be honest with you, Avner is. But yeah, it was a very gorgeous, slow piece, very mesmerizing. It was kind of our Fantasia, if you will.
And what's interesting is, so I love studying languages, especially in language learning. And there is a thing about when people speak a language, especially a second or third language, not at a completely native level, the vocal tonality of their voice is actually different than their first language. It's something
Nice.
really interesting. And so when you talked about how when she sings in her second language, it's just mesmerizing. Some of it could be that. Like if you listen to how people sing a second language, there's just always something different. It's not always just an accent. It's something about a vocal tonality and a vocal shift too. So another kind of topic to potentially follow up on, especially for my growth as a person aspiring to be a polyglot. So that's something, I guess, a teaser for everyone in the future.
Love it.
Yeah, exactly. So, are your kids all creatives too?
Yeah, I mean, all of our kids have done some acting. Or my son is our son, Michelle, my son. He's done quite a bit. If ever you IMDb him, like he's got a crazy list, Kiefer. And then Summer's done. All my kids have also been voices in a lot of my movies.
Mm-hmm.
So in Ultra Duck, they all have a voice in there. So that was the first time I had them in a recording studio in probably 3-4 years, which was fun. As a director, you always like to put your thumbprints on things and have little Easter eggs. So they're all different characters in Ultra Duck, and but yeah, I think they're all quite creative. Harmony, probably her biggest one she was in was Van Helsing.
Ooh.
Phoenix was in Fear the Walking Dead. Kiefer was in Mighty Ducks, the series, and then Summer was in Grumpy Cat. So they've all done their fair share of voice acting, and everything. So it's kind of cool.
And did the creative journey kind of just rub off on them, or did you guys actively encourage them? Was it kind of a little bit of half and half?
Yeah, I think it was actually we didn't really push this at all. What was cool, Jenica Harper is a writer, an amazing writer. And so I worked with her on Clockwork Girl, and then she invited us to a live screening of Mr. Young. And so we got to go and watch a TV series called Mr. Young, and all our kids went and they got like a pizza dinner and they got to watch the live taping. And I think they really like that, like a lot more. That magnet's still on our fridge. The show's been off for a while now, but I think when they saw that, it really was an inspiration to them. And I know that was kind of the moment for my son. He's like, I want to do that. How do I do that? And so, we started looking around and just slowly one foot in front of the next.
I see. And when you mention the concept of inspiration, right, I think that's a good question to ask you too, because you had this amazing journey where you do things and you learn from whatever quote unquote ways you fail and you keep going, right? What other ways, especially the world's changing so quickly, so I think a lot of people who have creative or entrepreneurial thoughts need some inspiration. What are some other ways you get inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of weird. I use Google Keep. And so when I'm feeling inspired, I'll literally whip out my phone, write it down. Could come from a song or a joke or a moment or something like at a family function even. And so I try collecting those little moments that do it. I mean, to inspire others. I mean, we are living in the coolest, craziest age. I mean, even just thinking, you mentioned ByteDance and TikTok. I mean, I haven't seen you in a little while. The last time we hung out, AFM, but like TikTok has just grown, air quote, overnight so quick to like global scales. And now I mentioned Mark on Indiegogo. There's Kickstarter. There's like so many ways to empower creatives more than ever before. Tubi even we mentioned it, and there's just so many ways. And now with all these AI art, which is controversial and finding its way, but I mean, I can't believe how fast this thing is going, and you can't put Pandora back in the box anymore, man. Like this thing is here, and it's only going to get faster, crazier, better. So I think we're living in an exciting time, especially if you are, like art, if you like storytelling, if you like content. I mean, it's a fantastic time, really.
Yeah. I think what I really enjoy talking to you, Sean, is the way you're able to frame a lot of things, right? It'll be so easy, like, oh, it's overwhelming, but the way you frame it, it's like, well, that's also lots of sources of inspiration right there. So you have a really great mentality that's needed for a business person and artist, and that's one of the things I'm learning from you, because the truth is I've been feeling very overwhelmed by how everything's evolving so quickly. But like you said, why not just try to be like, well, that's great, try to pace yourself, of course, but look at all that stuff and find little inspirations.
Well, thank you. And honestly, like, I mean, it feels like, one of the things I had to kind of learn early on is a high tide raises all boats. And so, it's one thing to see these other companies just accelerate, like Stability. They raised $100 million and it's $1 billion valuation, and all these things can happen so quickly. And while there's those phenomenal success stories, there's other people that are creating jobs and creating opportunities where there really wasn't that a year or two ago. I mean, and as some doors close, other doors open. And I always like to try and, have a boat in the water so the high tide can help all of us. You know what I mean? It's like, I
Yeah.
think right now, if you're looking at any sort of stability, stable diffusion, look at AI, look at all the different things happening, real-time rendering, virtual production, Unreal Engine. I mean, there's just so many cool, weird things happening. GPT-3, you can write your own programs now, like
Yeah.
literally using GPT-3. You ask a code that does this. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, exactly. And right before we talked, while I was working on other projects, I was also listening to literally, I was listening to stuff about AI art and GPT and stuff like that, and Open AI, right? That's everyone's talking about that. And like you said, just see what the machines come up with, and it probably can inspire your right brain too. That's the beauty of it.
Well, that's the thing. You're always going to need, like, these are just tools. Like, back in the day, ZBrush was controversial, Photoshop was controversial. Now it's like, it's part of a tool. And right now it's obviously a very disruptive technology. There's lots of scared people, panicked people. Maybe some rightfully so, others maybe it's the sky isn't falling quite yet. um, but it'll be interesting to see how all these things kind of start to shake out.
Exactly, exactly. So, you guys have an office in Vancouver. You guys have an office in China. Are there any offices besides that, or is just those two for now?
Just those two. And then, the one I've always kind of dabbled with or wanted was always LA. But it's funny going back to, like, when everything started shutting down, I know so many of my friends that are producers and executives and work for companies that are no longer there. It used to be, I think, very important to be kind of LA centric. Boy, it seems like during the last 3 years, lots of people have gone back to their home state or to where their parents live or wherever. And it's like, I think here we are on Zoom. I mean, 3 years, last time we saw each other, I don't think Zoom even existed. Now it's just so commonplace. It's like, well, of course, Zoom. No, everyone uses it, right? Now you have multiple Google or whatever, and there's just so many options. You don't need to be in one location. So anyway, I do like LA, but again, having the 4 kids here, I don't know if I need a third office yet.
And an add on to what you said is I think even within the tech industry, there's going to be a shift where not everything's going to be in Silicon Valley, not everything's going to be in the SF area. Because as you know, when the lockdown happened, a lot of people realized, oh, okay, I can basically do everything remotely. Why do
Sure.
I need to be stuck in a place that doesn't seem to have too much art, where everyone's always left brain thinking? Why can't I go somewhere else, be inspired, but also be able to clock in and work remotely? So I think, like the film industry, animation, like you said, but I think even the tech industry, which has always been known, Silicon Valley, even
Sure.
that's starting to shift.
And then, I think, Elon Musk recently said, like, they're going to be closing more Twitter offices. They want Twitter offices become bedrooms. They want, all these type of things. Meta's done the same thing. There's an article on a guy that works for Meta, and he's leasing or renting on a cruise ship. I don't know if you saw that article. And so he's doing a 12-month, 1 year long cruise while being a full-time employee at Meta. It was quite the interesting one to read.
And probably in 2023, I'm going to at least do something like that short term. So that's definitely something I'm going to try. So maybe I'm going to go to somewhere I've always wanted to go and just try to see if I can work there for 2 weeks, right? Don't be too ambitious. And then just go from there.
Oh, it sounds fun.
Yeah, exactly. Um, okay, so is there any topic that we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
No, I think honestly we did a pretty good array. I mean, right now my focus is it's hard to get these movies set up, and so I'm really focused right now on casting American Wasteland, getting that one up and going. I've been relatively public. That's my next one. I told people at Comic-Con, and yeah, so for me it's about casting that and getting that in production. And it's this time of year, like right now it's like I'm feeling really motivated and almost anxious, but there's not much I can do during the holidays. So learning to be patient is probably my next one.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the things I'm working on too, is learning to be patient, because there's a pace that the world and your mind will naturally do, right? If you try to rush it, unfortunately, that just leads to anxiety and other things. So definitely patience is something very, very important, especially if you're in this, let's borrow that word from Japanese Mandarin, gaishan or gaizen. If you're doing that all the time, that requires a lot of patience too. It's not improvement once, it's continuous, right? It's like you got to space it out, pace it.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. So, Sean, I think this is a really cool stopping point, and let's definitely bring you back for more talks, because I know
Please.
2023, we're going to have a lot more to talk about as these projects start moving. So, yeah, please, let's do something. Maybe we can even try something every 4 months or something like that. Just
I love it.
Yeah, exactly. So, guys, this is Sean O'Reilly from Arcana Studios. Actually, let me make sure. Studio or studios?
Studio, I think.
Studios. Okay. Arcana Studio and Arcana Comics.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely have them back. And I, before the lockdown, used to visit Vancouver. So, and that was after 2016. I started visiting Vancouver once in a while in 2019. So next time I visit Vancouver, let's definitely sit down and do a talk or just hang out.
That'd be great, please.
Definitely. Cool, guys. So thank you so much, Sean. And guys, leave your comment and ask questions for Sean. So if we bring him back in, we can tailor it based on your questions.
I love it. Thank you.